young black boy was just walking home from the library, lost in thought, when a racist biker appeared out of nowhere and did something truly despicable. He humiliated the boy, tore his belongings apart, and then did the unthinkable. He threw him into a dumpster. But what happened next? That will leave you speechless. Because, just when it seemed like no one would step in, Hollywood legend Keanu Reeves entered the scene. And what he did? Absolute heroism. Stay with us until the end to hear the full story, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Jaden Carter, a 12-year-old kid with big dreams, strolled down the cracked pavement, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The evening sky was painted in warm shades of orange as the last rays of sunlight flickered over the rooftops. In his hands, he held onto a worn copy of Voices of Justice, Civil Rights Movements in America, a book he had spent hours reading at the library, his personal sanctuary. It was his escape, a place where he could lose himself in the stories of people who stood for what was right. As Jaden turned onto a quieter street, the peaceful silence was shattered by the deep growl of a motorcycle engine. The sound sent a jolt through him, and he instinctively glanced over his shoulder. A black Harley rumbled closer, its massive frame gleaming under the dimming light. Jaden stepped aside, expecting the rider to pass. But the biker didn't. The engine slowed, then cut off just a few feet away. A heavy boot hit the ground, followed by another. The man peeled off his helmet, revealing a rough, scruffy face twisted into a smirk. His leather jacket was covered in patches, the kind that made Jaden uneasy. And then, the man spoke. "Hey, kid. What are you doing out here all alone?" There was something in his voice, mocking, condescending. Jaden felt his stomach tighten. He had been taught to stay calm in moments like this, to be respectful and avoid conflict. But something about this man's presence felt wrong. He clutched his book tighter. "Just heading home from the library, sir." The biker stepped closer, towering over him. He glanced down at the book in Jaden's hands, his smirk darkening. "Library, huh? And what's a kid like you doing with a book like that?" Before Jaden could answer, the man snatched it from his grip. He flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from curiosity to disgust. "Civil rights? You kids always playing the victim. Always crying about injustice. Maybe someone needs to teach you your place." Jaden's pulse pounded in his ears. His eyes darted around, searching for anyone, any witness, but the street was eerily quiet. The biker took another step forward, his shadow swallowing Jaden whole. "I'm not looking for trouble, sir. I just want to go home." The biker sneered. "Trouble? You think I'm the trouble?" He grabbed Jaden's backpack and ripped it off his shoulder, shaking it upside down. Notebooks, pencils, a water bottle, and a snack tumbled onto the pavement. The man kicked them aside like trash. "What's this? Plans for some kind of revolution?" "No, sir. Just school stuff," Jaden stammered, his voice barely holding steady. The biker picked up the notebook, flipping through the pages before snapping it shut. "Seems like you got a lot to say about history. Maybe it's time someone taught you a little lesson." Jaden took a step back, but the biker's hand clamped around his arm like a vice. "You know what happens to kids who don't know their place." He jerked his head toward a large, grimy dumpster at the edge of an alleyway. The sickly sweet stench of rotting garbage filled the air. Jaden's stomach turned. "Get in." Jaden's eyes went wide. "What? No. I didn't do anything wrong." But the biker wasn't listening. His grip tightened. "I said get in." Panic surged through Jaden as he struggled, his heart hammering against his ribs. He tried to break free, but the man was too strong. The world blurred as he was dragged toward the dumpster, his feet scraping against the asphalt. And just when it seemed like no one would stop this nightmare, a voice rang out. Deep. Calm. Unmistakable. "Let him go." The biker froze. Jaden, breathless and terrified, turned his head. And there he was, Keanu Reeves, standing at the edge of the street, dressed in his signature all-black outfit, his piercing eyes locked onto the biker with an expression that could make anyone rethink their life choices. What happened next? Well, you're not going to believe it. Stay tuned, because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Thrown into a dumpster, trapped in darkness, and left humiliated, all because of the color of his skin. Jaden Carter, a 12-year-old boy with big dreams, had just been attacked by a racist biker. The man overpowered him, tossed him away like garbage, and rode off laughing. But what happened next? That will leave you speechless. Because just when Jaden thought no one would come to help, a voice broke through the silence. A voice millions would recognize. A voice that belonged to none other than Keanu Reeves. And what he did next? Absolute heroism. Stay with us to the end to hear the full story, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. The dumpster lid slammed shut above Jaden, plunging him into darkness. The stench was unbearable, a mix of rotting food, decay, and filth. His body ached from the rough treatment, his mind racing with fear and humiliation. He struggled to push the lid open, but it wouldn't budge. Outside, the biker's cruel laughter echoed through the empty street. Let that be a lesson, kid. Stay out of places you don't belong. The roar of the motorcycle grew fainter as the biker sped off, leaving Jaden alone in the suffocating darkness. For a moment, he just sat there, heart pounding, unable to process what had just happened. Then, through the stillness, a voice called out, calm, steady, filled with concern and authority. Are you okay in there? Jaden froze. Was he imagining it? Hey, the voice called again, softer this time. I'm going to get you out. The dumpster lid creaked open, and light flooded in, making Jaden squint. A hand reached down, strong yet gentle. Jaden blinked through his tears and gasped as he saw the man standing over him. The kind eyes, the quiet strength, the unmistakable face he had seen in countless movies. Keanu Reeves? Jaden whispered, barely believing his own words. Keanu gave a small, reassuring smile as he helped Jaden climb out of the dumpster. Yeah, it's me. Let's get you cleaned up. Jaden's legs trembled as he stood, still shaken, his clothes stained with filth. Keanu knelt in front of him, his expression filled with compassion. You're safe now, he said gently. But tell me, what happened? Jaden wiped his tear-streaked face, his voice barely above a whisper. A man, a biker. He said I didn't belong here. He threw me in the dumpster. For a brief moment, Keanu's usually calm features hardened. A flicker of anger crossed his face. Which way did he go? Jaden pointed down the street, his hand still shaking. Keanu's gaze followed the direction, his jaw tightening. Then, he placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder, his touch steady and reassuring. Don't worry. We'll make sure he doesn't get away with this. Keanu Reeves had planned for a quiet evening walk, a rare escape from the spotlight. But tonight, he couldn't stay silent. He had to act. Standing beside Jaden, Keanu took a deep breath and turned toward the small crowd that had started to gather, people who had heard the commotion but had been too hesitant to intervene. Not tonight. Keanu wasn't going to blend into the background. He wasn't going to let this injustice be ignored. Raising his voice so everyone could hear, he said, Hey, everyone, I need your help. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Is that Keanu Reeves? Some people pulled out their phones to record. Others stepped closer, curiosity growing. Keanu pointed toward Jaden. This boy was attacked by a man on a motorcycle. He was thrown into a dumpster for no reason other than the color of his skin. And that is not something we can ignore. The crowd shifted, murmurs of anger rippling through them. A woman stepped forward, holding up her phone. I saw it. I got it all on video. Keanu nodded, his expression grateful but firm. Good. We'll need that. But we can't stop there. That man needs to be held accountable. Another voice spoke up, a man in the crowd. Which way did he go? Jaden, his voice growing stronger, pointed again. That way. Toward the main road. Keanu's eyes followed the direction. His mind was already forming a plan. He turned back to the crowd, his voice steady but urgent. If we let people like him get away with this, it'll keep happening. We need to stop him. A murmur of agreement rose from the onlookers. More people stepped forward, their hesitation turning into determination. Keanu looked at Jaden again. You okay to walk? Jaden nodded. His fear was still there, but something else was growing inside him now, strength. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his back. Let's go. We'll find him. And with that, the quiet hero of Hollywood and a brave young boy stepped forward, together, ready to take a stand. A 12-year-old boy, humiliated and thrown into a dumpster, left to sit in darkness, terrified and alone. But what happened next turned his worst night into something unforgettable. Because standing in the middle of the street, surrounded by a growing crowd, was none other than Keanu Reeves. And he wasn't about to let this injustice go unanswered. Stay with us to hear the full story, because what Keanu did next will restore your faith in humanity. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Jaden and Keanu led the way down the street, a small but determined crowd following behind them. People were joining in, drawn by whispers of what had happened, and by the presence of one of the most famous actors in the world, walking at the center of it all. But Keanu wasn't thinking about cameras or recognition. His focus was locked on one thing, finding the man who thought he could get away with attacking a child. They reached an intersection, and Keanu's sharp eyes caught sight of a familiar black motorcycle parked outside a small convenience store. His expression darkened. There, he said, his voice low. The biker stood outside the store, casually smoking a cigarette, completely unaware of what was coming. Keanu turned to the people around him. We do this the right way, no violence. We block him in and call the police. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. The energy had shifted. This was no longer just a gathering of curious bystanders. This was a community standing up against hate. Jaden clenched his fists, his heart racing. Just minutes ago, he had felt powerless. But now, standing beside Keanu and the growing crowd, he felt something he hadn't before, strength. Keanu knelt down beside him once more, his voice calm but firm. You're brave, Jaden. Remember that. You didn't deserve what happened to you, and now we're going to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else. Jaden nodded. Okay. The group moved forward. The biker finally looked up, his expression shifting from boredom to confusion, then to anger. What the hell is this? He barked, flicking his cigarette to the ground. Keanu stepped forward, composed but commanding. You know exactly what this is. The biker's eyes narrowed. Recognition flickered across his face. You're that actor, aren't you? Keanu nodded. And you're the man who threw a boy into a dumpster. The biker sneered. What's it to you? He doesn't belong here. The crowd stirred, outrage rippling through them. Phones were out, recording everything. Keanu didn't flinch. His voice was steady, unwavering. He belongs wherever he wants to be. And people like you? You don't get to decide otherwise. The biker glanced around, realizing too late that he was surrounded. His bravado cracked, and he took a step back. Look, I don't want any trouble. Keanu's eyes narrowed. It's too late for that. The police are on their way. You're not going anywhere. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. The biker's head snapped toward the sound, panic creeping into his face. He searched for an escape, but the crowd had closed in. There was nowhere to run. His shoulders slumped. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Keanu stepped closer, his voice low and firm. What's ridiculous is thinking you can hurt someone just because you don't like how they look. That ends now. The police car pulled up, red and blue lights flashing across the street. 2 officers stepped out, assessing the situation. Keanu raised a hand in greeting. "Officers, this man assaulted a child. We have witnesses and video evidence." One of the officers turned to the biker. "Is that true?" Before he could respond, the woman who had filmed the attack stepped forward, holding up her phone. "I have it all on video." The officers exchanged a glance before moving in. The biker barely resisted as they handcuffed him, leading him toward the patrol car. As they shut the door behind him, the crowd erupted in applause. Keanu turned to Jaden, who was staring at the scene in stunned silence. "You okay?" Keanu asked gently. Jaden swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Keanu knelt beside him one last time, his voice soft but full of conviction. "You were brave today. Don't ever forget that." Jaden's lip trembled, but he managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you for everything." Keanu smiled back. "Anytime." The police car drove off, taking the biker with it. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but not before several people stopped to pat Jaden on the shoulder, offering words of encouragement. A woman leaned down and whispered, "You're stronger than you know, kid." Jaden took a deep breath, feeling lighter than he had in days. He turned to Keanu. "Why did you help me?" Keanu's expression softened. "Because it was the right thing to do. And because no one should feel alone when they're in trouble." Jaden nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. As they walked back down the street, side by side, Jaden felt something new, hope. The world wasn't perfect. But today, he had learned something important. There were people willing to fight for what was right. And sometimes, heroes weren't just in movies. A boy attacked. A hero who refused to stay silent. A story that took the world by storm. But what happened after Keanu Reeves stood up for Jaden Carter? The truth is even more powerful than the moment itself. Because as the world watched, Jaden's story became bigger than either of them. But not everyone was supportive. And what Keanu did next? That will remind you why he's one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood. Stay with us to hear the full story, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Jaden sat at the kitchen table, silent, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wood. His mother, Lauren, moved around the kitchen, stealing worried glances at him. The clothes he wore last night had been washed, but the haunted look in his eyes hadn't faded. She placed a plate of pancakes in front of him. "You need to eat something." Jaden barely glanced at it. "I'm not hungry." Lauren sighed and sat across from him, her voice soft but firm. "You've been through a lot. It's okay to feel upset." Jaden stared at the table, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why do people hate me for no reason?" The question hung in the air, heavy and painful. Lauren reached across the table, taking his hand. "It's not about you, sweetheart. It's about them. Their hate comes from fear and ignorance. It doesn't define who you are." Before she could say more, Jaden's phone buzzed on the counter. He hesitated before picking it up, his hands trembling as he unlocked the screen. Dozens of notifications flooded his inbox, messages from friends, classmates, people he didn't even know. But at the top of his feed was a video. Jaden's breath caught as he pressed play. It was the footage of Keanu Reeves pulling him out of the dumpster, standing up to the biker, and leading the crowd to ensure justice was served. It had gone viral overnight, spreading across social media with captions like #JusticeForJaden and Keanu Reeves saves the day. Jaden scrolled through the comments. Some were supportive, praising Keanu's actions and condemning the biker's behavior. But others were cruel. "This kid is just looking for attention. Why is everyone acting like he's a victim? He probably provoked the guy." Jaden's chest tightened. He put the phone down, unable to read anymore. Lauren noticed his distress and moved to his side, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "What's wrong?" Jaden shook his head. "People are saying horrible things about me. They think I did something wrong." Lauren's grip tightened. "You didn't do anything wrong, Jaden. People will always have opinions. But the truth matters more." At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Jaden flinched. Lauren hesitated before going to answer it. And standing there, dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket, was Keanu Reeves. Lauren blinked in shock. "Good morning," Keanu said politely. "I hope I'm not intruding." Lauren quickly stepped aside. "No, of course not. Please, come in." Keanu stepped inside, his gaze immediately finding Jaden. "Hey, kid." Jaden's eyes widened. "Mr. Reeves?" Keanu smiled. "Just Keanu." He glanced at Lauren. "I wanted to check on Jaden after everything that happened. I couldn't stop thinking about him." Lauren, still trying to process the fact that Keanu Reeves was standing in her living room, offered him coffee as they sat down. Jaden sat across from Keanu, his mind racing. "Why did you come back?" he asked, his voice small but curious. Keanu leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Because what happened to you wasn't right. And because I want to help." Jaden frowned. "But why? You're famous. You don't have to do this." Keanu's expression softened. "Fame doesn't change what's right, Jaden. I saw someone in need, and I couldn't walk away. That's what we're supposed to do, help each other." Jaden's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you." Keanu nodded. "You're welcome. But this isn't over yet." Lauren's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and gasped. "It's everywhere." She turned the screen toward them. News headlines flashed across the screen. Keanu Reeves saves black boy from racist attack. Keanu sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I knew this would happen. The media loves a story like this." Lauren looked worried. "What does this mean for Jaden?" Keanu's expression grew serious. "It means people will be watching. Some will support him. Others won't. That's why we need to control the narrative." Lauren frowned. "How do we do that?" Keanu leaned back. "We tell the truth. We make sure people know what really happened and why it matters." Later that day, Keanu and Jaden stood on the steps of a local community center. A small crowd had gathered, and reporters were already snapping pictures. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on Jaden's shoulder. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." Jaden took a deep breath. "I'm ready." As they stepped up to the microphone, the crowd hushed. Keanu spoke first. "Yesterday, I witnessed something that broke my heart. A young boy was attacked simply because of the color of his skin. That's not okay. And it's not something we can ignore." He glanced at Jaden. Jaden stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly, but his voice steady. "My name is Jaden Carter. I was just a kid walking home from the library when a man decided I didn't belong. He hurt me. He made me feel like I was nothing. But I'm not nothing. I'm someone. And no one deserves to be treated like that." The crowd erupted in applause. But Jaden wasn't finished. "I want people to know that it's not okay to hurt others because they're different. We need to stand up for each other. We need to be better." Keanu stepped back to the microphone. "What Jaden said is true. It's not enough to be against hate, we have to actively fight it. We have to be there for each other. Especially when it's hard." The applause grew louder. Jaden felt something new inside him. Pride. Strength. He had spoken his truth, and people were listening. As the event wrapped up, reporters swarmed Keanu with questions. "Why did you get involved?" one asked. Keanu's answer was simple. Because it was the right thing to do. Another reporter turned to Jaden. What do you want people to take away from this? Jaden thought for a moment before replying. I want people to be kind. To help each other. That's all. Keanu placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder again. And in that moment, it was clear this wasn't just a story about a hero stepping in. It was about a boy who found his voice. And a world that needed to listen. A boy who refused to stay silent. A man who stood by his side. And a story that became bigger than either of them. Jaden Carter's name was now known across the world. His journey from being a victim to becoming a symbol of hope had captured the hearts of millions. But what happened after the viral moment? That's where the real story begins. Because with recognition came both praise and pressure. And Keanu Reeves? He wasn't done helping. Stay with us until the end to hear how this story changed lives forever. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. That evening, back at the Carter household, Jaden sat on his bed, scrolling through his phone. The video of his speech had already gone viral, spreading across the internet like wildfire. Messages of support flooded his inbox. Classmates, strangers, even celebrities and activists praised his bravery. Lauren peeked into his room. How are you feeling? Jaden smiled faintly, looking up from the screen. Better. He met his mother's gaze. I think I made a difference. Lauren nodded, her eyes shining with pride. You did. Meanwhile, across the city, in a dimly lit holding cell, the biker sat watching the news coverage on a small television. His face was twisted in frustration as he muttered under his breath. They're making me out to be a villain. His cellmate, an older man sitting on the bench across from him, shrugged. Maybe you are. The biker scowled, but deep down, he knew the man was right. The next morning, Jaden woke up to find his name trending on social media. His story had reached beyond his neighborhood, beyond his city. News outlets from around the world had picked up the incident. Hashtags like #JusticeForJaden and #KeanuForKindness filled his feed. Videos of his speech at the community center continued to go viral, inspiring people everywhere to stand up against hate and discrimination. Jaden was no longer just a quiet kid from the neighborhood. He had become a symbol of resilience and hope. But with that recognition came pressure. One evening, as he sat in the living room, scrolling through messages, he sighed. Why do people still hate me? He asked his mom, his voice soft but filled with frustration. Lauren placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Some people are afraid of change, Jaden. They don't want to confront their own prejudice, so they lash out. But that's not your burden to carry. Focus on the good you're bringing. Meanwhile, Keanu Reeves was dealing with his own unexpected role in the story. He had always been known for his kindness and humility, but now he found himself thrust into the spotlight as a public advocate for social justice. Interview requests poured in, but he ignored most of them. He wasn't interested in fame, he was interested in change. And he knew the momentum couldn't stop here. A rally was being organized to bring attention to discrimination and hate crimes. Keanu was set to speak, but there was someone else he wanted to be there, too. The day before the rally, Keanu visited the Carter household. Lauren opened the door, surprised but happy to see him. Keanu. It's so good to see you. Keanu smiled warmly. I wanted to check on Jaden. See how he's holding up. Lauren nodded toward the living room. He's in there. He's been writing a lot lately. Keanu stepped inside and found Jaden sitting on the couch, a notebook in his lap. The boy looked up and smiled. Hey. Hey, Keanu replied, sitting beside him. I heard you've been writing. Jaden nodded, holding up the notebook. I'm just trying to make sense of everything that's happened. It's a lot. Keanu leaned back, giving him space. It is a lot. But you've handled it better than most adults would. Jaden traced the cover of his notebook with his finger. I'm scared sometimes. What if people don't change? What if they keep hating me? Keanu placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Change doesn't happen overnight. But every act of kindness, every story like yours, pushes us closer to a better world. People are listening to you, Jaden. You've made them pay attention. That's powerful. The next day, the rally was unlike anything Jaden had ever seen. The streets were filled with people holding signs that read "Justice for Jaden, End Racism, and Stand Together." The energy in the air was electric, a mix of hope and determination. Backstage, Jaden's heart pounded in his chest. You ready? Keanu asked, giving him a reassuring smile. Jaden took a deep breath. Yeah, I'm ready. As they stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Keanu approached the microphone first, his voice calm but powerful. Thank you all for being here today. We're here to stand against hate, to stand for justice, and to support a brave young boy who reminded us that kindness and courage can change the world. He turned to Jaden, gesturing for him to step forward. The crowd hushed as Jaden took his place at the microphone. He looked out at the sea of faces, his hands trembling slightly, but he stood tall. My name is Jaden Carter. His voice was steady. A few weeks ago, I was just a kid walking home from the library. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't trying to make a statement. But someone decided I didn't belong. They tried to hurt me. They tried to make me feel like I was less than them. Jaden took a deep breath, his confidence growing. But I'm here today to say that I am not less than anyone. I am somebody. And so is every person who has ever felt like they didn't belong. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Jaden wasn't finished. Hate doesn't just hurt the people it's directed at, it hurts everyone. It makes our world smaller, colder, less safe. But kindness? Kindness makes the world bigger. It makes us stronger. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to stand up when we see someone being hurt. He glanced at Keanu. That's what Mr. Reeves did for me. And that's what I hope you'll do for someone else. Keanu stepped forward, placing a hand on Jaden's shoulder. You're incredible, he said, his voice filled with pride. The cheers grew louder. Jaden felt warmth spread through him. He had spoken his truth, and people were listening. That evening, as the Carter family and Keanu sat together, Jaden's father, who had been away on business, finally returned. He pulled his son into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Jaden beamed, surrounded by love and support. Keanu raised a glass of water in a toast. To Jaden, a boy who reminded us that even the smallest voices can spark the biggest changes. The room erupted in cheers. Jaden had come a long way from that night in the dumpster. He was no longer just a kid who had been hurt. He was a voice for change, a beacon of hope. And as he sat by the window that night, notebook in hand, he realized something. His story was just beginning. The next morning, new headlines appeared. Keanu Reeves and Jaden Carter launch Kindness Initiative. The article detailed their plan to create programs supporting victims of discrimination and promoting kindness and inclusion. Jaden's name had become synonymous with resilience. And as he stepped out of his house that morning, he smiled. Let's keep making the world better. Because now, he knew change wasn't just possible. It had already begun. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, subscribe and share it to spread awareness. Together, we can change the world.